Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. It's a joint webinar between FME and Veeva. My name is Frank Dentrone. I'm president of FME here in North America. And I'm going to kick it off and really get our webinar moving. So the topic today is how Vertex, one of our clients, joint clients with Veeva and FME, manage their content migration to the Veeva Vault platform. So what I'm going to do is start off with a bit of housekeeping, where all attendees are currently muted, and they'll stay muted throughout the entire session today. If you have a question as you're listening through the material today, if you have any questions that you'd like to share to our panelists, please do so in the chat window. You'll see at the bottom of the GoToWebinar meeting. On your end, you could type in your question, and I'll be monitoring those questions, and we'll look to field those questions at the end, towards the end of our session. Just to be aware, this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the link to the recorded webinar for those who may not have been able to attend, and for those who want to revisit the material, you'll be able to do so. So I want to thank in advance our two speakers, Lana Jalkan, a senior consultant from Veeva Systems, and Murthy Kopu, project manager here at FME, and they're going to share their experience on this engagement. And I'm looking forward to hear what they have to say in this session today. So I'll do a brief little go through the agenda. So I'm going to do a short background of FME for those who are not familiar with FME, so that won't take more than a few minutes. And then we're going to jump into the approach and timeline of this particular initiative, the migration scope and effort. So we'll go through that a bit and kind of share, our detailed experience on the migration effort itself. Talk through some challenges. As you all know, there's always a bit of challenge here and there in such migrations, but we'll express our experiences there, share those, and also cover lessons learned, which is always important when you're sharing material like we are today. Okay, so FME. So just for those who may not be too familiar with FME, we do have a long heritage in the life sciences industry. We have operations, or we have clients, and we operate in US or North America and throughout Europe. We're going to highlight a bit today our migration product, Migration Center, heavily utilized in the marketplace, especially in the life sciences or global pharmaceutical clients. We are some fun facts that I'd like to share with the community here. We are a partner in digital transformation, predominantly around life sciences clients, but also we have industrial manufacturing clients as well. We're founded in the mid-90s, so been around quite some time, about 240 or so employees. We have, we mentioned 250 project years, just many projects and experiences related to enterprise content management platform and migration. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, we have offices in the US, a few offices in Germany, and our teammates and colleagues in Romania that support us. And last, which I always like to mention, and we take it serious here at FME, is our slogan. It's FME you love to work with, because as you all know, it's all about trust and relationships, and we take it very serious. Okay, just another slide, and then we're going to dive into the material. So here is just a graphical representation of where we operate. As I said earlier, we're in North America. We're in Connecticut, in Danbury, Connecticut. In Germany, our life science team is in Frankfurt. In Romania, we're in Cluj, Napoca, and we have a up and coming center in India, which is more of a development center. And my last slide, and I'm going to hand it over to Lana. Here is just some highlights of our life sciences experience. Over 20+ years implementing life science solutions that span quality, clinical, regulatory, safety, and RIM. And we're going to talk about regulatory RIM in this webinar today. As I mentioned, many projects related to migration, especially in the life sciences industry, and just some high-level metrics. 90% of the top 10 life sciences clients are using our Migration Center product, and 60 of the top 30 are using our Migration Center product. And again, our product has been really engineered for regulated or validated platforms. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lana.
Thank you, Frank. Okay, so I'm Lana Jokan from Veeva, and I will be talking about the project perspective in terms of overall management of the project and what Vertex was trying to achieve as part of this implementation that included the migration that FME supported. As a starting point, Vertex, a SMB pharmaceutical company, they are located out of Boston mainly in the United States, and their mindset was very traditional. They had an EDMS system that was isolated, had a very singular system view. The existing vendor, there was minimal investment in the system, and there were limitations on the capabilities, interface limitations, and historically this system was about maybe 10 years old and really didn't ramp up or move along with the business change that was happening at Vertex with the leadership change. So there was a little lag there. What that ultimately ended up leaving was the end user base feeling frustrated and kind of not engaged in using the system, and in fact avoided using the system that they had. So that kind of paints the picture of where Vertex were starting at in terms of a baseline, and what they were looking to do with their existing situation was to kind of bridge the gap that was between the documents, their EDMS system, and the registrations. So both of these systems were independent. There were hierarchy, structure issues. There was no user end reporting capability, which meant that they were utilizing a lot of things, maybe Excel spreadsheets, trackers, things that didn't really pull the reporting all together. There was a clear disconnection between both of the systems, and a lack of search capability, which leads to the frustration, and then performance issues as well. So this kind of, shows an example of how the situation was current and the needs of what they wanted to do to improve that. The goal for us as Veeva coming in was to provide them with an end-to-end true RIM capability. And what they wanted was to have a solution that contained all of the registration data. It connected all the source documents from creation all the way through archival. And it must include submissions, documents, correspondence, and of course, they were looking for that integrated platform across the EDMS and their registrations, which they were currently lacking. In terms of the project timeline, it was an undertaking. We started in January last year, and we completed the entire project implementation and design and migration in September. So in the very beginning, we started working with looking at the registrations, the documents, the configs. We brought in the migration vendor, and then we heavily focused on the configuration, design, and implementation. Once we reached a lock there, we moved forward with the validation, and then created ways for them to adopt the system, their change management. We trained users, and all that was going along. We had the migration effort as well in parallel to these activities. What we resulted in, well, as I said before, Vertex is an SMB company, but they really had to have enterprise thinking, regardless of their size. We were able to provide that true end-to-end system that they were looking for. They had that right mentality and the data reality to reach that goal. we did make a very strong partnership between the business, between IT, between us, and also FME. And then I think they were ultimately very pleased with choosing FME as the migration vendor because of the Migration Center. And we're going to have Murthy speak a little bit more, or a lot more, about the details around the migration and how that carried out throughout the project.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Lana.
Sure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Murthy Kapu. I work as a principal consultant at FME. Today, I would like to share about our experience with this migration, some of the challenges that we went through and how we solved them. It's like an overview of the whole migration project. Like Lana mentioned, Vertex was implementing Veeva is their cloud-based registration and document platform to enable global authoritative source for all the regulatory content and product registration data. Again, the goal was to migrate to have an integrated platform for registration and content and use it to hold all the submission-ready documents. So we have to migrate two different systems: the EDMS system, which is QMOS, which was having all the documents, and then the registration system, which was using Ecuta ARIM. So we have to migrate from these two different systems. This is the landscape of the Vertex environment. So if you see on the first system on the left, it contains all the registration data. Again, this is coming from some of them coming from the historic documents coming from Outlook, some from Excel, some from Ecuta ARIM system. So in the middle, the EDMS system, this is again coming from QMOS. Goal was to migrate not everything, but we left some of the active document types behind and also excluded some inactive products, which Vertex does not want them anymore in the target. On the brighter side, before we started the project, the metadata first pass was completed on the Veeva side, and also the mapping first pass was completed. So and endpoint, what Vertex we wanted is to achieve one platform with both registration data and the document platform EDMS. So this is the migration timeline. It took us 4 weeks from the no-go decision to actually load and also complete the hypercare. So in the week 2, we did the Vertex has helped us with doing the object load. All the registration data, we loaded them before we started migrating the documents. Then there's an EDMS lock so that users does not use the legacy system anymore. And then on the weekend, we did the migration, and then we did the weekend and in the same weekend actually, and that's how we could go live in just the weekend. Okay, here I'm going to talk about some of the challenges. If anyone has done migrations before, any of the migration projects, you probably know they're never easy and they get very complicated. So we faced few of these challenges during our migration. First thing is complicated scanning queries. As part of migration, we have to only query the data that need to be extracted, not the entire data. And the challenge is the source system, QMOS, has 2 layers of database. One is the documentum, then on top of it, there's a life sciences layer. So we have to come up with scanning both of them and joining on our side. So it was not straightforward. So we have to come up with some scanning queries. I'm going to talk about solutions in the next slide. So that's one of the challenges. And complex mapping. Again, 10 years of changes to hierarchy of the whole document model structure. So created the wide variation. So business has to use complex keywords in the document title to identify the correct mapping. So it was not just one-to-one. It involved more than just mapping the documents. It was reading from the title, reading from the document name, several other things that define what the target model is. Then it has 2 source and 2 source systems. So we have to come up with 2 different migration strategies, both for registration, we have to use different strategies, and the EDMS documents, we have to use a different strategy. So there was an extraction limitation for the correspondence documents from the source registration because they were stored as documents inside the database, does not have a metadata around it and things like that. So we have to come up with a solution for that. And also we have to have a migration validation. Since both systems are different, the reporting capability is different. It was not easy to, as other tools, to just compare the and validate that the data was migrated properly and the whole whatever was planned was migrated. So it was not straightforward. That was challenging initially. Then there is corrupted data on the source. There are some documents which was even in the legacy system, they were not working. They were not able to view them. So there's no way to extract those documents because they were corrupted in the source system. Then of course there's the compact timeline. So within the given timeline, we had to complete the migration. Then we had some post-migration inconsistency. After we migrated, there were some changes in the business rules and processes that businesses identified. So then we have to come up with a solution on how to solve them. Again, these are the challenges we face during migration, and I'm going to talk about the solutions. Okay, so some of the solutions we did to resolve them. So first solution was to solve the challenge of having two source systems. Instead of loading both the systems at the same time, we loaded the registration objects first, then loaded the documents so that the needed metadata already existed in the system. And since the target system has sophisticated joins, mappings, so Vertex Business helped with loading the registration objects, mapping for those. And that's how we solved having to load two source system. And for complex mapping, okay, like I said, 10 years of change, a lot of variation. So it's not just one-to-one mapping. This was an opportunity even for business to reclassify under the right and more granular bucket. So FME Migration Center has a very powerful transformation engine, which created these multiple subsets of scanning bucket based on keyword. If the title had something that says one word, it goes to a different classification altogether. If it has different word, it goes to a different bucket. So we scanned from the source system, we created separate buckets based on the keyword searches and other things along with the source metadata. So we then use these complex mapping rules that Migration Center has a capability that can be configured in the tool to match with the business needs. So we could automatically transform the source data and reclassify them to the right metadata in the target. Of course, for the timeline, obviously, we had communicated with Vertex Business and IT, everybody early on any of the challenges of the situation. So if there's a mapping showstopper or anything else, we actually had the whole process lined out in the beginning so that we have enough time from the business and the IT to resolve these issues. So when it comes to validation, we used FME's internal tool, which can get the reports extracted from both the systems, which can compare and also does color coding on where there's a discrepancies between the data and can get the whole count of the migrated documents. So we could use the internal tool of FME to validate those. So and also for the corrupted documents, so the documents which we could not get it from the source extract, we came up with a solution to replace them with a sample document in the transformation rules. So the target still has the corrupted metadata, but obviously not the content. So that is one way we got the whole metadata. Then on the correspondence documents, like I was saying in the source system, there were maybe 5 or 6 or sometimes 100 correspondence documents for one database row. So we could not load 100 documents for 100 correspondent document because it belongs to one metadata value set. So we have to enhance our, and we added them as attachments to the main document of all these correspondence documents rather than just loading them as one more document. So again, these are some of the solutions we have. I know some of them might have gone technical, might have gone over your head, but this again, if you're working with any migration project, these are some of the challenges you might get, and these are some solutions we put together. With that, I want to pass it on to Lana to talk about a few of the lessons learned from the project.
Thanks, Murthy. All right, so as Murthy mentioned, with challenges, there are also lessons that are learned as well. And again, this was unique in the sense that we had Vertex project, and they had two vendors working together and in parallel in trying to get through the implementation and the migration to reach this singular go live date in September. And whereas 8 months seemed like a lot of time, it really wasn't when you got down to the wire and you try to get things done. So what we did here was we pulled together some lessons learned in different buckets throughout the project so that we could learn from and continually improve the process as we're moving forward with implementations and migrations. So migration scope, one of the areas where we saw improvement, we had mapping that began before configuration lock occurred, and that's before we actually completely agreed on what the design was going to be of the system, and that not having the mapping completed ahead of or after locking actually required a lot of rework and duplicative efforts on both sides, and we found that we were going back and forth a lot. So that's one thing that we would say, hey, listen, look to lock and then move forward with the mapping. For document field mapping and for the object record mapping, that should really happen in conjunction, again, because you have a lot of data that's connected, and that you need to really do that in conjunction rather than at different times, so that again your efforts are not duplicated, you're not having rework. We did see issues that happened during sandbox testing, specifically with generated renditions, and we needed to get a closer look at that to kind of assess and move forward ahead of getting into the VAL migration. So we saw little hiccups there we could have addressed better. In terms, again, of the object and the document field mapping, addressing unique keys on the object records and creating external IDs accordingly to assist and support the object references mapping for document loading. Something as little as mapping the pick list values and verifying the values that need to be added to VAL in migration. Just things that we kind of came across as we were going through the project. In terms of configuration, definitely once we are in validation that's completed, any changes that have to happen should be deferred until after business go live and processed through change control. The API and Vault connector for Migration Center, storing documents, metadata, CSVs and APIs, the logs, very important so that we can troubleshoot rendition planning, which was something that came up during the sandbox testing, utilizing the suppress rendition flag when migrating large number of documents, because those large number of documents do take a lot of time. So the next point about not generating large number of renditions when loading into the sandbox vaults was a key point there. And then, as Murthy mentioned, we had a very short timeline to do this. So we did load into production and plan for business go live all in the same weekend, and maybe we needed to have a little bit more timing for that, and a lag in those two activities happening. And then just from a documentation perspective, the migration plan, expected documents, object record counts, those are all things that should be recorded in the migration plan and should be static to a certain extent, with small changes or minimal changes, I should say. Capturing rules for transformations of the source data, sharing the migration plan with all of the migration stakeholders prior to approval, including Veeva as well, or the vendor facilitating the implementation. And then a little bit about migration, execution, verification, and summary reporting. Again, the counts, document object records that migrated into the vault, recording any issues for data that was not migrated, and identifying the root cause analysis and resolution details, all items that we need, as a lessons learned to improve our process. And then again, putting that lag time between business go live and migration, execution and verification, so that you have that time and don't feel like everything is just hitting a wall, and you have 3 days to complete, and then you can really vet out if anything unexpectedly happens. Okay, Frank, I will turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lana, and thank you, Murthy, for sharing your experiences on the engagement. So much appreciated. So what I'm going to do is just kind of summarize, and then we're going to kind of transition into a Q&A. So in summary, based on what was shared today, the key goals and objectives were having an end-to-end capable platform, right? So having both your regulatory RIM registration data, as well as your content, your submission content, all in one platform. So having that end-to-end capabilities is key. Secondly, which I just mentioned, including documents for submissions, but not just your source documents like clinical, safety, regulatory, module 1 documents, et cetera, but as well as your correspondence. So that was another key objective. Having an integrated platform which kind of dovetails into the end-to-end topic. So having an integrated platform in the cloud is another key strength of what took place. And last but not least, having a strong partnership, between client and Veeva and FME, us being the migration partner, was integral to the success of the engagement. So just for those who are not aware, FME is a technology alliance partner. So we have, from a migration center product perspective, that's where our relationship started with Veeva. We have, we're leading, customers in our life sciences practice around enterprise content management migrations. So we're happy to be part of that ecosystem. We have, since our partnership back in 2018, we've further received our migration services certified partnership credentials with Veeva, and we're very proud of that. And lastly, when we engage with clients on such migration initiatives, we do provide Veeva certified professionals. So I just wanted to make sure those who are in the session today are aware of that. And if you have any additional questions or anything comes to mind after we wrap up in this call today, you can reach out to us from a services perspective, where you can see info@fme-us.com, or if you have specific product inquiries, you can reach out to us at info@migration-center.com, and we'll be happy to field any of those questions that come to mind. So with that, I would like to first thank our speakers for taking the time to share your experiences about this initiative with Vertex. And I'd like to thank those who participated and listened in on the session and asked questions for your time as well. And I wish everyone a wonderful day, evening, and talk to you all soon. Thank you.